Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you're watching us from around the globe today, I say thank you for allowing us into your homes and most importantly, into your hearts. If you're watching us on the DBNA television network, a sincere thank you for your support. Continue to support our sponsors, support the network, and continue to support this outstanding talent. If you're listening to us in podcast form, I say crank that knob up and let us put that flavor in your ear. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, we're going to use the hashtag frankly speaking. Like this, send in your comments, send in your questions, but most importantly, share this content so others can enjoy this quality entertainment. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to lace them up for another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. Extremely thrilled, honored, and excited to have our guest on with us today. People in my circles will not need the introduction of this legendary, iconic man. 1984 NBA Coach of the Year, 1984 NBA Executive of the Year. He was also the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award winner. His name, Layden, is risen to the top of Vivent Smart Home Arena for helping bring these Jazz here to Salt Lake and Utah. He is the husband to Barbara. He is the father to Scott, Katie, and Michael. And Michael, thank you for helping set this up. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Coach Frank Layden. Coach, how are you this morning, buddy?
Scott, good to see you again. Yes. Great job there. I like the background there. Yeah. Wonderful.
I try to do a little something nice here, but hey, to have you with us is just an honor and a privilege. So thank you for your time today to come and share stories with our viewers and followers.
New York background there. My goodness, I can't believe that. Yeah, right in your own home, huh?
There you go. Coach, how's Barbara doing? How's everybody?
You know, we're doing very well, Scott. We're blessed. We've avoided getting sick during this pandemic. We have our shots. Our family is good. Our friends have been good. So, life has been good. What can I say?
There you go. Well, thrilled to have you, buddy. It's great to see you. And hopefully when things calm down here in the very near future, we can go share us another lunch together sometime soon.
By all means, I'll prove there is such a thing as a free lunch. Okay, Scott?
All right, buddy. I love it. Well, listen, let's get right into it and let's just tell some stories. We've had great guests on here just recently, Coach. I mean, we had Rick Barry and Spencer Haywood. Mark Eaton came on with us and the big dog, Antoine Carr, and had so much fun telling stories.
Yeah, all friends of mine, by the way. Yes. Rick Barry, the greatest foul shooter probably there ever was, and a real knowledgeable guy about the game of basketball, right from the high school ranks up to the pros. He always was a great player, great coach, great teacher, and a great free throw shooter using the old underhand method of shooting. Yep.
The old bucket shot. That's right. That's right.
Because you mentioned one of my favorites there is Mark Eaton. What a great guy. He's a great citizen, a hard worker. When we drafted him, a lot of people laughed at us, but it turned out he became an all-star, one of the league's great all-time shot blockers and outlet passes. He was a great guy in the early days of the Jazz. Yes.
Wow, he spoke so highly of you, and we told great stories, and I want to get in those, but I'd be remiss real quick. I've got a buddy out in New York who's a comedian, who's a big Jazz fan, and his name's JL Colvin, and I wanted you to you give him a little happy birthday shout out to JL.
JL, God bless him. Happy birthday. Yeah.
Hey.
You know what I mean? They start getting closer and closer as you go on in life. But good luck. And happen to travel through Brooklyn, just keep it a secret that we know each other.
I love it. Good old JL. He's an outstanding comedian who's really blown up, and super happy for him. And big Jazz fan. He's a huge Jazz fan out there.
Well, a lot of comedians are Jazz fans. A lot of Jazz fans are comedians.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Coach, You are recognized as one of the best luncheon speakers ever and just one of the greatest sports personalities ever. And so to have you come on the show today to sit here and chop it up a little bit, let's allow you to do just what you do. Let's tell stories.
Well, it's interesting to say that, because when I started out, I never intended to be a coach. My high school coach and my college, I was very fortunate to have Mr. Drucker in high school, was a terrific man. Mr. Gallagher in college was a terrific man as well. As they were both great coaches. One, of course, I grew up in Brooklyn and was the coach of my high school, Fort Hamilton High School, which JL might have heard of. And then, of course, I went to Niagara University, where I played for a fellow by the name of John Taps Gallagher. And really, it's been remiss that he's not in the Hall of Fame, because he was an innovator. He was a great coach. He never made a lot of money, but he loved doing what he was doing, and he had a great impact on a lot of young men. And both of them said, someday you're going to coach. I said, no way. I see what you guys go through, and it's a tough racket and it's hard. But I was in the service, and I got a call one day from Mr. Gallagher, Taps Gallagher, my coach, Coach Gallagher. And he said, hey, when are you getting out of the service? I said, well, I'll be getting out around next September. He said, well, I think I got a job for you. I said, well, I need a job. I was married. I was looking to go into business somehow, maybe sales or something. And he said, it's a coaching job. I said, coaching? I don't want to go into coaching. He says, well, it's something you can think about. You can try it, see how you like it. So I said, where am I going? He said, in high school. I said, oh my gosh, how do you do that? He said, well, you got to teach class and what have you. But anyway, make a long story short, I went for the interview. I got the job. I had to go back to school, do some more work to get my credentials in New York State. But I started teaching high school history, 5 classes a day, homeroom duty, bus duty, lunchroom duty, all the things teachers do. And then, of course, after school to coach. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about basketball, but they started me at the lowest level. I was in the junior high. I was the freshman coach at this school, and I was working with the youngest kids. And just immediately, I realized, I said, this is where I should be. Coach Gallagher and Coach Drucker were right. I said, this beats working. And, I started out with that. 10 years in high school, 10 years of coaching in college, and then, of course, 13, 14 years in the pros.
Wow.
I saw a lot of great people. I met a lot of great people. And some of it went back to my college days. I was fortunate enough, Scott, to have a roommate and a classmate. And we played baseball together. We played basketball together. Was a fellow by the name of U.B. Brown, who you probably heard of it. UB, of course, was a great announcer now, but he was a wonderful basketball coach, and a Hall of Famer, by the way. That's how good he was. And he coached in high school and college, and he told me I was coaching at Niagara, our alma mater, and he said, "Go in the pros. That's where it's going to be in the future." And of course, they had the ABA and you had the NBA. He said they're going to merge. He says we're going to make a lot of money. You don't have to recruit. And he said, I think you'd like it. And sure enough, he took me on as his assistant. And I went to Atlanta with him as his assistant. We worked for the great Ted Turner, and the rest is history.
Yeah, see, I love that story.
Well, I tell youngsters when I go around and speak, I say, listen, it's important to study. It's important to work hard. It's important to be good at what you do. But it's even more important to have a great roommate.
Hey, and talking about Coach Hubie Brown, I mean, when he's a broadcaster, I mean, yeah, he was Coach of the Year when he came back and took that Memphis Grizzlies team, but his insight and his knowledge and acumen that he shares while broadcasting puts him at an elite. And just to be around a guy like that, Coach, had to be phenomenal for you.
Well, he's a great clinician. And it's funny, when we went to school together, that's all we did. We both loved baseball. We both played for the college team. He was a catcher and I played first base. And we had another great player, a great professional player was a guy by the name of Larry Costello, who coached the Bucks. And at one time, this is a little school, Niagara University, only had 2,000 students. We had three guys, Larry Costello, Hubie Brown, and Frank Layden, coaching in the NBA at the same time.
Wow.
We played together at Niagara, and both baseball and basketball. In fact, Larry was a better, and so was Hubie, and I think I was too. We were all better at baseball than we were at basketball. Though Larry became a very, very good professional player and a very good coach. He won the championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. He had Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at the time, Lou Alcindor, and they won.
Lou Alcindor, that's right, the Skyhook. Wow.
We had a good time, but going back to, you mentioned about speaking. Well, when I was coaching in high school, I didn't make any money. It's funny, when you need the money, you don't make it, and that's when I needed it. When I was coaching, I took 2 summer jobs, and I'd be working at night and doing all sorts of things to keep my head above water. But anyway, we always had a house. We always had an old car. We always, we banged along. And the important thing was being happy. But one thing, that I made money doing was speaking. I went out. Someone said to me from my church, I was a Catholic, and I used to be in the CYO with the kids and stuff. And they asked me to come and speak at church breakfasts and communion breakfasts and all these events in the church. And they'd say, hey, would you be our speaker? And I started to speak, and I started to kid around, kid some of the people in the audience and what have you. Same jokes. I'd always be stealing jokes wherever I could. But, I started to make pretty money doing that. Well, later on, when I got into the pros and college too, with college, I had to do a lot of recruiting. So I'd have to speak at school. I'd recruit some kid, he'd come to our school, and they'd say, oh, you have to come and speak at our banquet, awards banquet at the end of the year. Those were free. But the other times, I found out I could make pretty good money speaking and making appearances. And then I got an agent, and I actually started to do motivational speaking for companies, and even got into doing a couple of movies. I got a screen. I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and I found out that there's good money at other people listening to you talk. Some better than others, but I worked at it. And like I said, I used to steal a lot of material, and I'd see people and do a little skit, a little act that I could do, putting it for baseball, football, basketball, whatever it happened to be. And I had a lot of fun doing it, but made a lot of money. In fact, Scott, in 1984, the following year that I was coach of the year, and I got a lot of publicity internationally because of that, I gave over 100 talks. And that 100 talks, that's 100 days. You have to travel someplace, you have to travel back. It was a lot of work, but it was very profitable. And I got a chance to actually go to Italy, go to London, go all over the United States speaking. And it turned out that people knew more about me speaking than they did about coaching. They weren't impressed with my coaching, but they liked speaking. So, but I did. It worked out fine.
Oh, it's been just phenomenal. Every time I'm around you, I feel so uplifted and enjoy the storytelling. So to be doing this with you today is just a lot of fun. Give us a Hubie Brown story back in the days when you guys were probably driving the old beat up clunkers and going to a gym to do a camp or something, or doing a clinic. Give us an old Hubie Brown story that a lot of people wouldn't know.
One thing about Hubie Brown, all right? When you see him and broadcast or be a commentator on television, one thing about it was, and I learned this from him too, very important in coaching. When I was coaching in high school, I used to wing it. I went day in, day out. Oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. Well, I found out that when you got to the pros and you had so many games, you had to be organized. And he taught me that lesson was how to organize, prepare for practice. And then it became important not only to prepare for practice, but prepare for life. And I went around more recently giving talks to people that were preparing to retire and saying, have a game plan. Be prepared. Don't just go off into, hey, I'm quitting. You can't play golf every day. You can't live in Hawaii all the time, So what happens is preparedness. So the greatest thing I learned from Yubi, and I really mean this, was to be prepared. And you can see that when he broadcasts the game. The difference between him and a lot of the other people, especially the celebrities who do the color part of the broadcasting, a lot of great guys do play-by-play. They're professionals. But the guys, ex-players and ex-coaches who do the color stuff, they're not prepared. If you listen to Yubi, he not only knows the game, but he knows the personnel. He studies, he works at it. And even now, after listening to him for 20 years, I think back when I started with him, we'd be on the airplane, he'd have the book out, do this, do that. This is what this guy did. This is what Jack Ramsey does. You got to watch Jack Ramsey. He'll do this. Somebody else will press you. Somebody else. Yeah, was he taught me about being prepared for not only for basketball, but being prepared for life, being ready to be in the next stage. What if you're fired? It's devastating to some coaches. We were in a position, I used to say, if I ever get fired, I'll get a better job. I'll be a good salesman. I can be on TV, radio, whatever it might be. Study, be ready. And in fact, make it part of your life to have fun. That's very important. And I can remember us talking about that too. One thing about Yubi, we were laughing all the time at ourselves, but we also were laughing at other people because we were having fun at the job we had. And this is the truth. It never was about money. The money just came. When I coached in high school, I didn't have much, but we had a car, we had a house, we were able to send the kids to camp. We got to college, all right, we had a little bigger house, a little bigger car, country club, stuff like that. And then we got to the pros. The real kicker was everybody was treating us. It was amazing. I was getting free meals, free food, free clothes. I used to say, I don't need it now. I need it in high school. But the way life is. But the greatest thing of all, Scott, and you are right in there with all the people. The greatest reward we ever had, the greatest thing ever came back to me, besides being able to help youngsters get on with their lives, be better husbands, be better fathers, be better businessmen, be better soldiers, whatever it might be. All right. It was very important, all right, to say that you got to have fun. Your job has got to be fun. Mother Teresa tells us, if your job isn't fun, you're a slave. And I really believe that. My father, he worked on the docks, he was second generation from Ireland, and he was a longshoreman. He came to this country, and every day he went to work saying, I gotta go to this job. I hate this job. He used to say, oh, thank goodness it's Saturday, because he worked a half a day on Saturday even. And I used to say, thank God it's Monday. I love to go to work. Yeah.
I love that. And once a coach, always a coach. Again, hashtag frankly speaking. We got legendary coach Frank Layden on here with me today, and he's sharing some great nuggets. Coach, I just love your passion, and I've learned so much from you. I still have a book that you gave me when I was the head coach of the Utah Eagles right here, and you came and gave me that book. And again, it was all about preparation and scouting reports. And I've always picked your brain because you've always got a wealth of knowledge, and I've always enjoyed your delivery. But it's just you're always coaching, and you're always helping people. You got that servant heart, and that's what I admire about you.
Well, the best part, and I started to think about this before, but then I got off track. But the important thing is relationships.
Oh,
it's to know who you meet. Some good, some bad. I'll tell you one thing. Since I've been retired, I sit around a little bit more. I do a lot of reading. I'm catching up on reading that I missed years ago, though I've always been an avid reader. I continue my education. Barbara and I have gone into studying the theater. We've even gone to London, to the University of London, and studied theater, critical theater there. Not being actors or actresses, but being able to say what's good theater and what's bad theater, what have. Just have fun with it. and seeing theater all over the United States as well as Europe and what have you, and thing. But the best thing I've seen is, and I look out at say what's going on in our country today, is to separate those people who say, I want to serve, and I'll talk about serving. They'll say how important it is. And it is. It's important to be a senator. It's important to be a congressman. All right. It's very important to be a teacher, because now you're talking about harvesting our future with our youngsters. You know, how important is that? What you put into their heads, they will carry for the rest of their lives, because you're the mentor, you're the teacher. What an important job. But the one thing that scares me to death is this selfishness.
Oh,
that people are more concerned about themselves than helping one another. Haven't we gotten over it yet? I mean, we've had wars and civil wars and unrest and everything else, and we're still afraid of the minorities, huh? We're afraid of those people. And frankly, you know, I've been able to sit back and think about these things and saying how lucky I've been to meet some of the giants, not only just in the world of sports, but in the world of theater, in the world of politics, and you know, and how people are not. You know, we were in the locker room one time, and gee, President Clinton calls up, you know, and wishes us luck and stuff in the playoffs. You know, we've been blessed that way, but I have been able to weed through and look through and evaluate people for what they are worth and what they are doing. And if we're not helping others, then what else is there? There's nothing else to do. So I urge people that, you know, if you're coaching, you're teaching, you know, we all have some talent in some area that we have something to give. Pass it on to others, and
amen.
be blessed with the idea that you're going to get something back for it. Everything I do for someone else, it comes back 2 and 3-fold for me. But like I say, since I've been able to sit back and become an observer, a critic of society, I'm just appalled by the greed out there. You know, this wonderful country where we get so much given to us, and yet we're afraid to share it. And, you know, when I hear about it, it breaks my heart when I see, you know, people along the borders just trying to crawl into this country. Well, that was my grandparents at one time coming across from Ireland during the potato famines and stuff, you know, and people struggling and fighting. And, you know, and I've lived through an interesting part of my life, you know, a depression, a Great Depression, World War II, you know, it just goes on and on, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, you know, and see that so much sorrow and hurt and what have you. On the other hand, I was present for Jackie Robinson's first game. I lived in Brooklyn, and I was in high school at the time, and I cut school. Proud to admit that I did that. Went to Ebbets Field, all right, slapped down my 55 cents with my card from high school. I went in and saw Jackie Robinson break the color barrier and play. You know, and I was there
Wow.
with Lou Gehrig's record in baseball. You know, Scott got us some tickets. Scott Layden, who was a coach, and we went to see Ripken break the record. I mean, you know, so I've had great excitement. You know, Final Fours. You know, great games. I mean, we saw Bill Walton in that great series at UCLA, and you know, got to know people like Dean Smith and Johnny Wooden, and the great high school coach Morgan Wooden, and coaches like you, Scott.
Oh, I'm thrilled to even be put in the
Scott Field. I never knew anybody had more passion for basketball than you did.
Hey, just to be put in the same sentence as those guys, I am extremely honored and humbled. Thank you, Coach.
Well, you know what? A good coach is one that wins when it has good players. I think you'd be as good a coach as anybody that ever lived. I mean, because nobody has a better work ethic or is more credible. But the big thing is that coaching is a teaching device. And it's not just winning. You know, some of the best coaches I've known were guys who were coaching in high school, coaching in the WNBA, coaching women, and were able to make an impact on their students, on their players that is life lasting, and that's more important than all the rest. there's only so many trophies every year that can be given out.
Coach, you're so right. And to think about how, the best coaches are always the best teachers and best communicators, and they get to know their people and put them in a situation to be successful. And that's what I always focused on. But to see the things that you've done and the things that you've accomplished, I'm just always in awe, being around you and, sharing, words of wisdom. And I love these nuggets that you're sharing with our viewers today. And it's just so amazing.
If you go out and if the players believe that you love them, if the players believe that, and this your own children do, if they believe that you love them and what you're asking them to do is going to make them better, and it's not you that's always profiting, all right? Of course, you're going to, if they win, that's fine. Like I say, some of the best teams I've haven't been, it had the best people on them, weren't always the championship teams. The thing is that you do, if the players believe that you're interested in them and you're doing things for their interest and you're interested in their lives after basketball's over. You were talking about Mark Eaton, and we had Daryl Bailey, who lives locally, and I get to see them from time to time. Special people that go on and serve after they're finished playing in the professional ranks, still continue giving back to the community. That is what's very satisfying.
That's a winner. That's right. Those who can give back to the community, serve their community, provide mentorship and leadership and guidance for others. Coach, that's the badge, and there's no price tag you can put on that.
But, athletes too have that gift. I mean, look at the industry uses athletes to sell their products. So when Michael Jordan says something, people listen. LeBron James says something, people listen. So, a lot of these athletes are starting to step up now, and whether it's racial injustice or whatever it might be, voting rights or what have you, people are going to listen to them and they're going to follow them because they are special individuals. They're gifted individuals.
So true. So true. And, you mentioned before talking about having fun. And nobody had more fun than Coach Layden. My dad back in Indiana, he loves to hear you tell a story about Morgana, the kissing bandit.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I had heard of Morgana because I saw her at baseball games.
Yeah.
I think she ran out and kissed, what was his name? Monday. The guy used to play with the Dodgers. I can't think of his name now. I think it was Monday. What the heck was it? But anyway, I saw her run out on a baseball field and kiss a couple of baseball players. Well, anyway, and that particular day, she was in town to be at, I think they were a yacht show or something next door to the Salt Palace. They had a big reviewing place. And they were selling yachts, and she was hired to go there. Well, anyway, that night the game was on, and we had called a timeout or what have you. And I look up and I hear that crowd roaring. I look, and here I see her coming, running at me, running right. And I figure she's going to run up. She's going to kiss Karl Malone or something, or John Stockton. So she runs right by them. She grabs me. She says, "Do you mind if I kiss you?" So I said, "If you don't, I'm going to smack you." So she, and that's when I fainted. I fell on the floor, and it became the play of the day on ESPN. It was, and it's funny. I had great runs against the Lakers and rivalries with Pat Riley and all these great games at every Madison Square Garden and the Forum and LA and everything else. But that's what I was remembered for, kissing Morgana falling on the floor. So you never know when that moment arises and greatness is going to be before you. It's funny. She still sends me Christmas cards.
Oh.
Yeah, she said one time she was on some show, not one of those late night shows, and they asked her, "Who was your favorite guy you ever kissed?" She says, "I never heard of him." She said, "They got me out of this show and brought me over to the basketball game." She said, "I swear I never heard of Frank Layden." She said, "But they sent me in to kiss him." She said, and he reacted wonderfully. She said, "We kissed, and then he fell on the floor, and we both got a lot of publicity out of it." She said, and she said, up to that moment, I had never heard of him before. But anyway,
Oh,
Monday was the guy I was thinking of, the Dodgers outfit that you kissed. Yeah.
oh, coach, that's just great. Talking about rivalries and talking about NBA competition, and it's just drama, and people are so excited about it. I mean, talk about the times where you're coaching against Larry Bird, and Larry Bird is just going to town, and there's the story that he looked over at you like, "Hey, coach, you got anybody over there who can guard me?" Kind of share those kind of stories.
Yeah, well, it was funny. You think about opportunity, and that's what I try to convince the people. Is let's say you're playing in the Boston Gardens, and the players get in there, and I could see during the shoot arounds, the players are looking up at the ceiling and they're looking at all those retired shirts and all those famous championships and everything else, and so anyway, you try to do the best you can. Now, I remember one time that I called timeout, and I said, "Look," I said, "let's we were losing like 19 to 6, and the game was only like 4 minutes into the game, and so I called timeout, and the players, I could see the players were scared to death. So I said, look, look up at the ceiling. I said, you see all those championship trophies, all those championship flags. You see all those names that are retired up there. I said, look up in the stands. Who's sitting up there smoking a cigar? All right. During the game, he's smoking a cigar. The great Red Auerbach. I said, this is a great team. I look over there and I see Larry Bird and I see Danny Ainge and all these great players on the Celtics. I said, I know they're much better than us. I said, but my goodness, I don't think we can beat the Celtics, but we should be able to beat Larry Bird. I said, but right now he's ahead of 14-2. The team was laughing. They were going out onto the floor and they were all looking at each other and they were slapping hands and laughing and everything else. And Larry Bird looked over. He says, hey, coach, what's so funny? So I said, you'll never know, will you, Larry? And anyway, we lost in overtime.
Oh, wow.
The team pulled themselves together. They were tight. They were feeling it. They were looking up at all the things and Larry Bird and all this stuff. Well, we came roaring back and we played. And there was a time which, it didn't take strategy. It took some reason to loosen up and to enjoy the game and have fun. And I had to remind our guys, we're in the NBA too. They're not in here by themselves. And when they came out here, we beat them. Yeah, we had a guy on our team named Bristow who got in a fight with Larry Bird. They both got thrown out of the game. We ended up beating the Celtics up pretty good.
Great strategy.
Yeah. We didn't mean to do it, but that's the way it worked out. One thing is that day, Larry Bird's a tough guy. I have a lot of respect for him and everything, but he picked on the wrong guy. And Bristow was a tough guy too. He wasn't known as well as Larry Bird, though he was a real career pro and had a great year with the Spurs, a great career with the Spurs before he came with us and then played well with us. But he got into it toe to toe. They were throwing haymakers at each other. They both got thrown out, and we ended up beating the Celtics. That was the first time we beat them, and we beat them here.
That's awesome. You talk about toughness, and when you think toughness, of course, I think Coach Jerry Sloan, may he rest in peace, but I also think John Stockton. Give us some John Stockton stories and that toughness and that grit.
Well, you know what? John Stockton was gifted because he had to feel that a lot of players, the hardest thing about going from college to the pros is knowing when to shoot and when to pass. And that's why when you look at the pros right now, it's hard to pick out what you say is a true point guard, a true quarterback, somebody that wants to deliver the ball, get the ball to somebody at a certain time. We used to say, we want to get 2/3 inside to 1/3 outside. We want to make sure that we want to get the ball to who we want to have it at a certain time. We want to say, what kind of shot? When are we going to shoot it? What kind of shot is it going to be? And who is going to shoot it? I mean, I want to, if I'm going down the wire, and especially in those days, I want the ball in the hands of Malone. I want and Adrian Dantley. I don't want some other guy that can't make the shot, or the odds are he's not going to make it. And I didn't know about this, what they do now about this actuality or something where they count how many shots you take and all this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I think that that we knew where we wanted to go. We used to have something in which, you know, we at the end of a game, we never would take an outside shot. We were going inside where we were going to get fouled or get a good percentage shot up. And of course, you got to have somebody that's able to deliver the ball and do that. And I can remember, you know, having drafted Stockton. We already had the all-star point guard from the West was Ricky Green.
That's right.
So we were having training camp down in St. George, and we had our first scrimmage, and Ricky Green came out during a timeout, and I was coaching the team that had Ricky Green on it, and we had our second unit coached by Jerry Sloan, and Ricky Green came up to me. He said, "Hey, coach, you got a good one in that kid over there." And of course, that kid was number 12, was the great John Stockton. Stockton made great decisions. And of course, when he was a good shooter. And when he first came to us, he didn't have great range, you know, and now he had the 3-point shot in and what have you. He went home and he paid kids to feed him, to get to shoot and work. He was willing to pay the price. And that basically is what happens today, is kids aren't willing to do that. We have, you know, people, someone told me this and I believe it. Isn't it amazing at how many Asian girls are good in golf? And I asked somebody about that once. It says, because they're willing to practice alone. They're disciplined. And that's the kind of discipline that John Stockton had. He went home and became better. He didn't work on only those things he was good at. He went home and worked on those things he wasn't good at, and he made himself a perfect player. But he also had great vision. He had God gave him a lot of tools, all right? Peripheral vision. He knew when to throw the ball hard, when to throw it soft. He had big hands, but he also was powerful. He had a good little build on, all right? He could set a vicious pick.
That's right.
And, you know, a lot of big guys that, you know, we'd cross underneath in our transition game. And we had little guys sometimes trying to cause mismatches. So we'd have little guys picking on big guys. And I had some big guys say, "Hey, the guy that throws the hardest pick in the league is John Stockton." He wasn't afraid to throw his body out there. And, you know, the other thing is he loved to play. That is so important. He loved the game. He loved, you know, he was there. He the first one in, last one out. He loved to shoot. He loved to play. He loved after practice was over, he'd get a guys together and play a little half court 3 against 3 with each other. He loved to compete, and I think that's what made him unique.
Yeah,
he had that old Irish toughness. His old man and his family they were bartenders and they were used to being slugging it out with people. But yeah, he was tough. They played hurt, you know. And
there was no load management back then, because he was the Cal Ripken of the NBA.
They played, and you know, Malone, you know, they loved to play. They played hard. I remember Karl Malone having a finger bent back. We were playing an exhibition game against the Spurs in New Mexico, and his finger was bent back. It was a mess. It was just terrible. They were talking about surgery and this and that. He pulled it back. All right, told the Sparky, our trainer, to tape it up, and he played in the second half. And when I asked him afterwards, I said, "Why did you take a chance of doing that? The doctor said you shouldn't go back and play." And he says, "Hey, a lot of people paid a lot of money to see me play. They may never have a chance to see me again here in New Mexico." He said, "I wanted to give him everything I had." And it was an exhibition game. Yeah. Now, I'm not against load management. I'm not argue with that factor and everything else. What I do argue about is when people pay to see the Jazz or they pay to see the Lakers, they pay to see the whole team. They wanted to see Malone, Stockton, Eaton, you know, Bailey, whatever it was, and they want to see Magic Johnson and you know, Jabbar and Worthy and these guys. That's who they paid their money to see. So they get there and they find out hey, two of these guys aren't playing because they're resting. You know, I said, this isn't work. My father needed a rest on the docks. You know,
Yeah.
he needed time off. But
Oh,
yeah, we we have to be careful that we don't spoil our athletes mentally, you know, and that we don't widen the gap that's already there between high school basketball and professional basketball. You know, it scares me to death if someone said, "Isn't it great?" They are great shooters now. The athletes now, I'm not going to argue one bit. These are the best athletes in the world, and they're playing the game at the highest level. The shooting is unbelievable. When I see Del Curry's son, you know,
oh,
Steph Curry,
Steph. Yeah.
well, Del played for us, and he was a great shooter, a good shooter. But this guy is the greatest shooter I've ever seen in my life. But everybody can't shoot like him, and yet we still pump that ball up there. The 3-point, you know, we used to say you live by the jump shot, you die by it. If it doesn't go in, and now we're doing it with the 3-point shot. We're trying to catch up. We take a lot of bad shots are taken, even though the shooting percentage may be up there. It doesn't mean that there aren't bad shots taken at certain times in the game. I see teams virtually giving up by taking too many 3-pointers at the end of the game. And so we have to be careful of that. But Stockton had that balance. He knew who to get the ball to, when to get the ball to them, and how to get it to them. He was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was
Something special.
yeah, and he was a very talented player, very strong, had great endurance, took care of his body, and once he learned to get his range, he didn't bring great range with him to the NBA, but he learned to be an outside shooter. He was an excellent 3-point shooter, made some great important shots, as we remember against Houston that time for the playoffs. But yeah, he was special and tough and a real team player, and was interested in winning. But let me tell you a great story about him, and then we'll move on. Is that on Sunday mornings, all right, my phone would ring. I pick it up and say, "Coach, we're meeting downstairs to go to mass." He would get all the Catholics on the team and march us off to mass on Sunday mornings. To tell you the truth, after a game the night before and partying a little bit after it, it would have been more comfortable to stay in bed. But this is the kind of guy he was. He was a good Catholic gentleman, a religious, and yet tough as nails.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that, because a lot of people don't get to pull the curtain back and get to know them other than what they see from the stands. But I just
Yeah,
love his toughness.
and sometimes we see that, and we get false impressions of who the people are. You know, it's who you are all day long. You know, it's
Yes,
always,
sir.
you know, if I leave a guy in a room with a puppy, does he go and pet it? You know?
There you go. I like that.
Yeah. So, you know, you see when kindness is needed, you know, then we find out who people are. Yeah.
True,
What they do.
testament to character. True
Yes,
testament to character.
that's
Well,
right.
let me ask you this, Coach. Back in the day when you just get moved here to Utah, and you're in the Salt Palace, and of course they're pulling the rodeo in and out of there and trying to get people to come to games. In your opinion, who was the most important piece to Utah basketball? Who was it? A player in the franchise? Was it your creativity, creating the old Indiana Jones commercials, or what was the most fun, and what was the most important part of building it here in Utah?
When I came here, I was with the Atlanta Hawks as an assistant coach. I was doing a lot of traveling over into New Orleans to see the New Orleans Jazz, whose star at that time was the great Pete Maravich,
Oh,
who
Pistol.
one of the greatest players that ever lived. All right, great
Ever.
back, and he loved the game and what have you. But he was hurt. He hurt his knee, and he never recovered from it. Maybe today he would have, but he in those days the operations weren't as slick as they are now. But anyway, we came here, and I'm gonna mention a name. A lot of people in Utah will remember this name. A lot of people from the Mormon Church will remember this name. But it was a gentleman by the name of Wendell Ashton. He was the publisher of the Deseret News. And he had a vision. He had a vision for Utah. He said, we are at the crossroads. Are we going to be Boise forever, or are we going to be Dallas?
Wow.
He said, city of the future. Is this going to be the real Mecca for the Mormon Church? He said, then we have to build up the arts. We have to build up our sports, what have you. And he had a vision of having a symphony hall, all right, at one end of the city, and at the other end, a basketball arena in which we have professional basketball. And they were heard here they had the championship team of the ABA, but the team folded because of lack of support financially and what have you. And
the
also,
Stars.
because we had, the famous Stars, but we also didn't have an adequate venue to play in. The Salt Palace was one of the things when the Jazz were allowed to move the team here by Sam Battistone, who was an absentee owner in terms that he lived in Santa Barbara. But he was a member of the church, of the Mormon Church. He promised that sometime in the future we would look at building a new arena. Well, Wendell Ashton saw the idea of having at one end of the spectrum a beautiful arena to house conferences, to be able to bring in big, not necessarily church conferences, but business conferences, and have people see how wonderful it is here with our mountains and the weather and the skiing, and then the wonderful summers and everything else. And then at the other end, he wanted to have a big symphony hall where we could show off the arts. And, we didn't have these things. The Salt Palace was not built for having professional sports at the number of games that were expected to play. It was good if you were going to have the rodeo, something like that, a couple of events a year, but it certainly wasn't big enough or durable enough to have the events of a major league team day in and day out. So his vision was to get professional basketball back. And he got Sam Battistone. He got the league to have the team coming back. He said they would get the support of the church, which we did, and then parking space and the promise of building a building or what have you. Well, eventually, of course, I would say Wendell Ashton had a lot to do with it. Of course, Sam Battistone, who brought the team here, put his money where his mouth was. Then we had a fellow come in here by the name of Dave Checketts. And Dave Checketts, who not only put a business thing on it, I was the general manager, but to tell you the truth, I was just interested in basketball. I wasn't selling tickets. I do all crazy stunts to try and sell. We had bat day here one time. We gave out baseball bats because baseball had done it. But anyway, we tried to have a good relationship with the community, particularly the high schools. Particularly, we started junior jazz, and we had more kids playing in the junior jazz, something like 110,000 in 5 states right around here, playing junior jazz basketball. That became, now the whole league is taking credit for it and doing the same thing in the NBA. So we started junior jazz, and we started this idea of making the Jazz part of the community, that we were Utah's team, not Salt Lake City's team. All right. And so anyway, Dave Checketts put a mod on it that was about business, and we had promotions and tickets and 100 Club and all these things. So he had a lot to do with it, and I think that then he got Larry Miller involved. Larry Miller came in and bought half the team, all right, and he had a Texas handshake with Sam Battistone. That meant if either one of them wanted to sell, the other one could buy the rest of the team from them before they made it public. And there were times when I thought seriously, we were out of here. We'd be headed for Minnesota or Vancouver or wherever it was, Toronto. But instead, we always managed to hold on. Larry infused enthusiasm, and he infused money into it, the Miller family, and they put up a lot of money, and then he committed to the building. And once he did that, that solidified who the Jazz were. we not just built a building, we built the best building, one of the best venues in the whole league. And it was big enough, it was strong enough, it was enough, I say strong enough, in other words, to sell this community and the whole country on basketball. And then we had the All-Star game here. We had the finals here. All right. All of those things helped to solidify who the team was. Now, who else? We had Battistone, Miller, all right, Checketts. I mentioned before Wendell Ashton, who was he was the driving force, I think, that kept us here and never gets mentioned, never gets his name mentioned. But if it wasn't for him, there'd be no Jazz.
Wow.
He got away. He went to New York. He talked to David Stern, convincing him that we would be able to sell tickets and move the team forward. All right. And then came Jerry Sloan. First as an assistant who had lost his job as a coach, had a great reputation as a tough guy, as a player, what have you, got the coaching job with the Bulls, didn't have a very good team, lost the job, and then came back here first as a scout for us, and then as an assistant coach, and eventually coach. So he was the next person who stepped up and really made this team a contender. And once we had shown that we could handle the playoffs, even to the finals, the whole world saw us on TV. And then we saw the All-Star game here. I think we were off and running. And this became from not just another franchise, small franchise, but a model. Believe it or not, we got calls from the Pittsburgh Steelers to have us go there and talk to them about operation. We got the call from the Dodgers, all right? And we went down there. I remember one thing about the Dodgers. They taught me a lesson and said, when you get good people, keep them. Everybody in the Dodger front office had gray hair because they had good people. They worked there when they were young. They stayed with them. And we did the same thing here. We had so many people, Helen Danes, I mentioned, was a little lady who worked as the head secretary here, Judy Adams. I mean, there was so many people. I won't name to hurt somebody's feelings, but we had people who came here and worked the rest of their lives with us, and just brought such character and enthusiasm, and loved the Jazz.
Yeah.
Loved the Jazz. Not about money, but because the Jazz were a family, and it worked out that way. So those are a few of the names.
Oh, just wonderful.
No organization is built on, you can say, what saved the Yankees? Babe Ruth? Of course, he had a lot to do with it. But then it was, now when you look back on what has been the last 50 years is the Steinbrenners, what the Yankees are about,
So true. So true. I'll tell you what, we're going to continue this conversation because we're having so much fun, but we'll call that part one and we'll continue on with part two. Coach, tell us a great Coach Jerry Sloan story. Talk about that toughness when he came in a part of your staff and how you knew and your vision is what he'd take that team to the next level.
Well, first of all, I had admired Jerry as a player, and I learned a lot about him when I didn't know him personally. I hired him on Phil Johnson, who was the assistant coach with us. I knew him very well because they had played for Dick Motta, who, by the way, was another great coach from this area, should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's outstanding. Jack Ramsey, Dick Motta, those are the names that came up when you talked about, Hubie Brown, the great coaches in the NBA. But anyway, I remember, when Jerry came with us and listened to him talk about his days and then the fights he was in and all this, everything else. But the greatest story I remember of all is when he finally took over the team, and he met with the team. And this is I'll just generally talk about what the basics of his first talk was. He had the team, and this is amazing. When the rookies are in, you got about 18 guys. There's a few guys still trying to make the team. You're only going to carry 12. You got some rookies, you got some free agents or whatever it's. And he got everybody carried around. He said, all right, now I know, he said, you guys, that there's going to be some people in this room are going to disagree with me during the year. He said, there's going to be we're not always going to get along. Just like a family, there's going to be disagreements between us. He said, and there's going to be some times in which I'm going to be challenged. And in fact, sometime you may even want to get physical with me. He said, now you're young and you're big and you're strong and you're tough and you want to get physical with me. You want to go head to head with me. He said, let me say this. You may win in the end because you are younger and bigger and stronger and all that, faster. He said, but you better be prepared to lose an eye, lose a testicle, he said, because I fight dirty and I never give up. He said, you are going to know at the end of it, you may have won the fight, but you're going to pay a big price for it. And I looked around, I saw the players sitting there with their mouths open. He said, so we got that clear? And there was just silence in the room. And right then I said, well, he's proven now who the boss is. They're going to listen. There isn't going to be no second guessing, you know.
He set the tone right there.
He set that tone right there. Yeah.
I like that, Coach. That's a great story. And then, of course, you know, how about Karl Malone? Just the mailman. I mean, number 2 all-time NBA scorer. Give us some Karl Malone stories.
Well, I remember when Karl Malone came with us. You know, of course, he was, a big, tough guy from Louisiana Tech, and he had a reputation as a battler and what have you. And then maybe he would be a little bit uncontrollable, too. I felt exactly the opposite. What he wanted was control. He wanted discipline. He wanted to win. And when they said they called him the mailman, it was because he delivered. Well, I found that out right away. But when he came here, we had the Founders Day, you know, and what is it, July 23rd or something. And they had this big parade. It happened to be his birthday. And he thought the parade was for him, you know. But anyway, he was the type of guy, I related the story before. He fixed his finger and played with with a broken finger. And it pained him a lot. It pained him for the whole season. But he said, people paid to see me play, and I'm going to play. The end of his first season, he came in and we have a, an exit meeting and what have you. And I met with him and I said, Karl, you're a tough guy and you're gifted. I said, but you're like a lot of palookas in this league. You'll knock people around, but you'll never reach what your destiny can be. Be a great player unless you learn to shoot. I said, you have to practice. You have to work on those things that you're not skilled at now. You're good around the basket, but now you're facing big guys every night that are bigger than you are and taller than you are, and more skilled than you are. And I said, so you got to get a 15-foot jumper. You got to learn to run the floor and get some layups in every game and everything else. Well, he went home and like Stockton, he worked on his game. He was the worst foul shooter, I think, in the league. And I think at the end, he became almost the best foul shooter. I mean, he was, it was like a hack-a-shack. They used to foul him on purpose in order to get him on the foul line at the end of the game and get possession. But he became so good at foul shooting that didn't do that. And that was just practice over and over again. And that, as you know, Coach, that has a lot to do with foul shooting, but it also has to do with the 15-foot jump at the little. That's all he needed, And once he got that, then he could take the ball to the basket and get it, because he was big, but he wasn't big enough to post up people in the pros all the time because they just put people bigger than him up. So he had a little moves around the basket, and he had great second effort. So we tried to say to him, set up goals. I want you to get so many layups a game, which means you have to run the floor. I want you to get so many offensive rebounds and see if you can go back up with them and get fouled or get baskets. And, after a while, we all of a sudden, and then we had Stockton getting him the ball on the spot, wherever he had to be, whatever we ran, we were in the pick and rolls with him. And the next thing, he's still the second leading scorer, isn't he, in history?
Yeah. See, good stuff. And let's talk about some of the guys a part of the franchise. How about Hot Rod Hundley, the great announcer? Talk about Hot Rod.
Hot Rod Hundley had great recall. First of all, you start out, we talked about UB Brown broadcasting before. Hot Rod Hundley had great recall. He read a lot about the game. He loved it. You could see it. He loved professional basketball. Not everybody loves what they do for a living. Not everybody loves what, what their profession is about. We get doctors who, after a while are tired of it, what have you. They may be skilled, everything else, or maybe they do it for money. But Hot Rod, he loved professional basketball, and he had great recall about what happened prior. He knew about the history of the game, and he was clever. He was very clever in talking about it, And of course, he came from a very, background that was poor and what have you,
Yeah, West Virginia, out there with Jerry West.
And he had a couple of people who went to bat for him and made sure he got through high school when they saw how talented he was. People forget he was the #1 pick in the draft, by the Lakers. But he was a fun guy, and he was good for the spirit of the team, because no matter how bad you did or what have you, when you got on the plane, we lost and everything, he still would have a, hey guys, let it go and all that, And he was a good guy to be around. He was a good friend, and he was durable, and he liked the Jazz, and he liked working for Sam Battistone, and he liked coming here. And they used to kid about here that he came from Bourbon Street, which was because he liked to indulge a little bit and have a couple of beers now and then. But anyway, he was a great character, and he knew the game. And I don't think he would have coached because he wasn't disciplined enough. But he knew the game as well as anybody, and he could relate to it. And of course, he came from that, West Virginia with the great players that had come from there, like Jerry West. Yeah.
You bet. And then how about somebody just like our Jazz Bear, John Absey, who wore that uniform, that costume, that mascot for so many years? How about a good bear story? You got some good bear stories?
Right from the beginning. And I don't know why he isn't the bear now. I don't know the guy that is the bear, and I don't really care. But John Absey is a generous man who has done so much for really working for others, charities, what have you. He never turned anything down. What I remember when we were looking for mascots, and we had all sorts of things, crazy things to use. So the mascots weren't big in the league. Yeah. It came right. First, we had to get used to cheerleaders. Then we got, the dancing girls and all that. Yeah. But he came along, and someone said, we're going to have a bear. We're going to dress the bear up in a Jazz uniform. And I said, what, the bear in the Jazz? I don't see the connection. But I mean, I was busy too. I didn't have all time to do it. We would try. But he was clever. First of all, he's a great athlete himself. I used to worry that he took too many chances. And I was worried that he was going to get hurt. And I used to remind him of that a lot. But he was a true entertainer. And I think he did a lot for not only just mascots in basketball, but mascots in professional sports. He became something very special. But the best thing I know about him is his generosity.
You better believe it.
At a mascot's football game every year and give the money to the schools, for their sports and their facilities and things like that.
Yes, very charitable around the community.
Ask him to go up to the hospital and visit the children's hospital. Whatever he could do, he would do. John Absey. He was a special, and we miss him, by the way, because the guy that's there now does a good job and everything, but he was unique.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. I'm glad you mentioned some of those guys that are kind of behind the scenes who don't get a lot of recognition, because you and I know it takes a village to make a team. And, this team and this community, and you go into some luncheons with a lot of the guys and hearing some of the old first season ticket holders of the Jazz and hearing those stories. I mean, that's where it's all the foundation of this whole franchise.
Sure. I mean, we had characters. When we first started, we have a great building now. But, when we had the old Saw Palace, we had our own band. Yeah. We had it was like the Dodgers. I remember being a Dodger fan in Brooklyn, and we had the Brooklyn Symphony. Yes, they used to call them the Symphony.
Yeah.
And so, we had a band, yeah. We had a boosters club, and the boosters were a wonderful group of people who bought their own tickets, came, and they would have birthday cakes for the players. They knew when their birthdays were, and they would be outside the locker room with a birthday cake on their birthday and sing to them. And then if a player needed help or he's in moving, and they would help their families move in. And I mean, we had a wonderful spirit of the early jazz days that was lost somewhat when we moved into a building as big as the building we have, and the seats became so expensive. There was that personal touch and that family touch somehow began to be missing, and it was hard to bring back. Though Larry Miller tried to do a lot of things as he had done with the baseball, by bringing back the name the Bees and doing things with them that from the old days. But it's hard when you get into a position like we are with the present building.
Yeah, right. Well, talk about, I mean, you're such a family man, and family means everything to you, and you're so proud of your kids. Talk about how important it was to have Barbara by your side when all of this was going on.
Barbara's a special person. She was very pretty, very good looking, and I admired her stature. She was a good student. She graduated from the Georgia State in business, and then when she got here, she went up and she worked at the university in the counseling department, and then decided she wanted to go into counseling and became a professional counselor for people with drug and alcohol abuse, and spent many years working in that area. Never took a dime, never took any money because we didn't need it, but she spent a lot of time helping women with drug and alcohol problems, which sometimes in this community can be lost because there's a lot of denial here. So anyway, she did that. But what she did was so important. I spent a lot of time, Scott, with other people's kids and not enough time with my own. I'll give you an example. Scott Layden, the fellow who, has been general manager and coach and with the Jazz and whatever he is, and how he became coach with the Jazz, assistant coach with the Jazz, is because in all his time, he was a very good high school player. He was a very good college player, became captain of his team, St. Francis of Loretto, all right, where Kevin Porter went to school. There's a lot of great players at that school, small Catholic school back east outside Pittsburgh. And, he was a great player. And you know what? I only saw him play twice. Mm. We went to 2 games. So Barbara was father and mother to our kids. So we had a son who played baseball and got a baseball scholarship at the University of Utah, and played high school basketball, baseball, and football. Was a quarterback, and did very well. Had a chance to play in college also, but played baseball. And then my daughter, she was a good athlete.
Katie.
Katie, and she went to Dixie, and then from Dixie to Portland State, and has worked with the Marriott Corporation for, I guess, almost 30 years. So they turned out very, very well. And Scott was a little bit older than the other 2, but they got along. But Barbara was the head coach. Like I say, I spent a lot of time with other people's kids. Spent a lot of time on the road, and that you have to be careful of that. I mean, that's a price. In fact, when I quit coaching, that's why I quit. One day I said to myself, enough of this. I've got to give something back. I owe it to Barbara. Maybe we're going to do some things together. And it wasn't that we didn't have quality of life. When I was home, we went out, we had good dinners. We met some of the giants in the world. And that basketball opened up to us, And so, if Johnny Wooden wouldn't come to Utah without getting in touch with us. I mean, that's how we were. We were fortunate to have those kind of people in our background, Mm. But the thing is, with all of that said, all right, Barbara really carried the torch and did a wonderful job because our children turned out very, very well, very well.
Yes, yeah, Coach, you and I both overachieved. We both overachieved with our spouses.
and that's important. And I mean, even now, people say, especially in my friends from Brooklyn and stuff, of course, say, "How you stay out in Utah? How you living in Utah?" I say, "Well, we're here in a witness protection program, but we try. What we try to do is we try to think in terms of, is this a good place? Because now we're here with the grandkids, and we're watching them play soccer and
Wow.
on all the things that are good. So this is a good place to live.
You
And
bet.
it was good. But if it hadn't been for Barbara, I don't know where Frank Layden would be today. I really don't.
I love hearing that, Coach. She's a special woman, and I always enjoy conversations with her. And I
She
know
does that every day. She tells me that every day. She's a special woman.
I like it. I like it. Well, Coach, who are some of the big hitters that you met in your life that you never thought you'd get to meet? I mean, you talked about Bill Clinton calling into the locker room, but who's somebody that you were kind of starstruck from? Like, wow, I can't believe I just met this guy because of what I do.
Well, I think if I go back to my early days, some early coaches, Joe Lapchick of St. John's, who had been a great coach of the Knicks. I knew Red Auerbach very well. I'd been to his home in Washington. People didn't realize that his home always was in Washington. He lived in a condo there with his wife, and that's where he went to school. He was from Brooklyn, but he went to school and then in Washington, and then stayed there. Had a hotel room. Lived like Majerus a little bit, the great coach at the University of Utah, in a hotel in Boston. So Red Auerbach, of course, and Red Auerbach was a great mentor of mine. I used to call him a lot about things, because I used to say he didn't just coach and be a general manager and president in professional basketball. He helped to invent it, and that was the truth. He had a lot to do with where and what would sell professional basketball. I don't know. Ned Irish, the guy who ran Madison Square Garden, was always a hero of mine, and I always remember him saying, "We're in this to make money. Winning games is great, but we want to make money." And I'll never forget, he heard that he saw teams putting their names on the back of the shirts. Now think about this, Scott. Names on the back of the shirt. He said, it's no good. He said, people won't buy programs. They won't need programs if we put the names on the shirts. We'll just put numbers on the players. And so he was against that.
Wow.
It's a small thing. Morgan Wood, great coach at high school coach. All right. From Washington, with Adrian Dantley's coach. I always admired him because he was a guy who had vision. Besides, he saw how important sports was to save kids. A couple of guys become professional players or college players even, but the rest go off into life, and hopefully you're making them better fathers and leaders in the community. And Morgan Wooten, Johnny Wooden, Dean Smith. Dean Smith, I can remember going and staying with him for several days and watching practice and everything else. And I said, it never gets any better than this. This guy is the best in the world, I met Casey, the great baseball manager, who had played for the Dodgers and coached the Mets and what have you. So I don't know, it goes on and on. What can I say? Casey Jones was a very Casey Jones with the Celtics. When he later on then coached, we became very close, and was a great man. And I don't know. It goes on and on, really. Too. It's hard to say is somebody more important than someone else. But most of the people, I had a lot of fun. With Pat Riley, we were good friends, and what have you. So, and we go back. People don't realize that Pat originally, back in his old days, was from New York. He was from the Albany area, and eventually went to Kentucky, where he was a good player.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Sports, but I met people in religion, and it's funny. The further I got away from Utah, all right, the more important I seemed to become. People used to you, But I can remember being in Italy, and coaches and politicians and everything, You know, I walking down the street and people going, numero uno, the big man, numero, Utah Jazz, you know.
Wow.
And
Global ambassador.
yeah,
Global
yes.
ambassador.
Well, but because of the two, because of the TV, you know,
Yeah.
I've seen changes, you know, from the day, you know, when basketball was relatively a slow down game. Whoever thought, you know, you see God score 50 points, you know. But, you know, I saw a lot of great players, a lot of great guys, people in and out of sports, you know, from Monsignors to bishops to pawns. Who knows, you know?
You bet. Well, you know, and let's talk about another friend of ours. How about Smitty? How about the job and the dedication Smitty has
Well,
had to this organization for years? Oh,
well, you know, you get people like Smitty. That's Richard Smith. Has been with the Jazz, and he came with us on a recommendation from a friend back east where he was from. That said that he told him to come down and see me, and he did, and he started you know, real menial, and then he worked his way up. But again, you're talking about he loves it here. He loves the community. He loves the Jazz. He works hard for the Jazz. He's one of those guys that's never about contracts, money, or anything else. He works to make the Jazz better. And when the Jazz win the championship, which will happen, all right, he will be one of the guys who played a tremendous role in it. Yeah, he's a great ambassador for the Jazz. When he goes out, he's the head of all their development and scouting, and especially their international scouting. And behind the scenes, he's responsible for a lot of the players they get that people don't understand. Well, how do we get this guy? Well, Smitty has put his thumb on a lot of good players.
man,
Yeah,
he's just a high character guy, just a great person,
he
and like you said, hard
never
worker. But
never does anything to hurt anybody. It's always positive.
amen. Amen. Coach, I love it. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I appreciate you, my friend. And when this weather gets warm and things calm down, can't wait to hear you sing that seventh inning stretch out there for the Bees. And let's get
Well,
together soon.
you join the thousands that can't wait.
I love it. Well,
That's part of having the fun. You know, one of the great things I've done in my life, and like I said, I've traveled around the world and met giants and everything. But Harry Carey died in Chicago. You know, the great announcer, and he used in the seventh inning sing, "Take me out to the ball game." And one of the great highlights of my life is when the Chicago Cubs called and invited me to come to Chicago at their expense. Barbara and I, all right, we went to batting practice. Sosa was hitting all those home runs and everything. And there were days we went and we were playing Milwaukee. I was with Yuka. Remember Bob Yuka? He was
Bob Yuka, yeah.
They were playing the Milwaukee Brewers, and I sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" up where Harry Carey used to do it. And
Wow.
I was on Yuka's show back to Milwaukee when he was broadcasting from Milwaukee. So anyway, after the game was over, they had a limo for us. They took us to the place in the morning. I got to meet all the Cubs. Don Zimmer was a coach with them then, and all this. And then I sang the song. It was a beautiful day and everything else. Well, anyway, I said to Barbara, when we go home, I want to take the train home. We'll go back to the Marriott on the $1 Million Mile there, and the big thoroughfare in Chicago. And I said, well, when we get there, I said, I want to take the train because that's more like Chicago. So we just got out in the crowd and we're getting in. We're going up into the thing, pay money, get on the train. We're on the train, and trains out there outdoors. They're not like in New York where the subways. They're up in high. And we're driving through Chicago, and some guy goes, "Hey, Coach Layden, Coach Layden." Everybody turns. He goes, "Hey." So I said, "Hi, how you doing?" You know, from one end of the car to the other. We're all standing, strap holders, holding onto the strap, you know, and everybody goes, "Hey, hey." So he says, "Boy, you sure sing a hell of a lot better than you could coach."
Oh,
The whole train bursts out laughing and everything. So I said, thank you, Chicago.
Oh, that's a great story. But and then how about you going with Marv Albert doing the NBA bloopers? How did that get started?
Well, I had just retired, and they decided to do the blooper tapes. I hadn't thought anything about it, but Marv Albert started, and they were going to give it out with the swimsuit edition of the Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
So they did that, and then it started selling. It became the biggest seller of tapes in the world at the time. It was translated to other languages. I was getting mail from Israel and Russia and wherever basketball was played, Italy, from people who were using it. One lady in Israel was using it to teach English to the kids there.
How about that?
Yeah, because kids would watch it. They'd want to see it. So we did it together, and we didn't make nearly any money. In fact, I say to the NBA, "You owe us money. You made all you sold us." They said, "No, Sports Illustrated." They lied. They made the money. But yeah, it's funny, and I still see people today say, "Oh yeah, when I was growing up, we used to watch." My father used to say, "If you go to bed now, I'll let you watch some of the blooper tapes." And then places we would be, Barbara and I would be in a place, they go, "Oh, it's the blooper man." That was in London. We were in London. They were going, "He's the blooper man. He's the blooper." That's what I remembered. Well, what the heck? But it was fun.
Yeah. Coach, this has just been wonderful. I thank you so much for your time and your storytelling. I want you to know, a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about it, but I want you to know how much you mean to me, how much you've impacted my life. And I love you, my friend. I thank the world of you, and I can't wait to get together and hug you.
Okay, Coach, and it's been a semi-pleasure to be with you today.
I love it. All right, my friend. Well, listen, God bless you. Stay safe. Health is wealth, my friend, and can't wait to see you and Barb real soon. And thanks again, Michael, for helping put this all together for us today, my friend.
You bet, Coach. You're the best. Bye-bye.
God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Coach Frank Layden. And we've had so much fun here this last hour and a half, just telling stories and just connecting. And that's what this is all about: relationships and empowerment and storytelling. And I can't thank him enough for his time. So, Coach, God bless you. Be safe. And we're going to see you real soon, my friend. Thanks for watching the Coach Scott Fields Show. Thanks, Coach.
Save the world. You got it, baby.